So we just concluded looking at the unit circle and identifying coordinates and angles on the unit circle. Now we're going to use that information to solve a different type of trig function, which is called the inverse trig function. Now the first thing that I need to talk about with you is something called the cast rule. The cast rule talks about an xy plane. We can think of our quadrants. So remember, they are labeled 1 through 4, starting in the top right, going counterclockwise. And also, I'm going to put in this CAST, which means our cast rule, starting in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, what these represent are the first letter of the trig function where they're positive in that quadrant. So all are positive in quadrant 1. So sine, cosine, and tangent, as well as their reciprocals, are positive in quadrant 1. Sine is positive in quadrant 2. So remember, sine refers to y values, and if you think of this as an x and y plane, then you can remember that y values are positive above the x-axis. In the third quadrant, tan is positive. Tan is a relationship of y over x, and both the y values and the x values are negative in the third quadrant, making a relationship of y to x positive. And the last one is cosine. Cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant because cosine is x values, and x values are positive in the fourth quadrant. Now, why do we need to know that? Well, we are therefore going to talk about questions where we're asked to find the inverse trig function. So if we look at this question, it says find the value of sine to the negative 1, and you need to know that sine to the negative 1 can also be written as arc sine. They are interchangeable. So when you see this question of sine to the negative 1 root 2 over 2, what that question is really asking is what angle has a y value of root 2 over 2. Now the reason why it specifically is y value is that sine refers to y values. So if you remember from earlier, cosine is equal to x over r. Sine is equal to y over r, and tangent is y over x. And in these cases on our unit circle, r is equal to 1. So therefore, when we're asking for sine, sine is really equivalent to y over r, where r is equal to 1. So sine is equivalent to y. So if we go back to the question, find the value of sine to the negative 1 root 2 over 2. And it's very, very confusing. It's really saying what is the angle that creates a y value of root 2. So we think of our unit circle. This is why we need to know our unit circle. If we go back to the unit circle, so we're looking at our unit circle, and we're trying to find out what is the angle that gives a y value of root 2 over 2. So if we look at our unit circle, our y value of root 2 over 2 is here and here. Now we only want to give one answer, and whenever the question is being asked, we always give for sine, we're always going to give an answer in either quadrant 1 or quadrant 4. And that's kind of just a rule. If we're being asked tangent, it's going to be quadrant 1 or quadrant 4. And if it's cosine, it's either going to be quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. That's just something you're going to have to memorize at this point in time. So if I look at these two answers, my y value is root 2 over 2, my y value is root 2 over 2, but I need the one that's in either quadrant 1 or 4. Well, this is quadrant 2, so here's my answer. So my answer is going to be 45 degrees or pi over 4. So that's what the question's asking. We can actually also do this on our calculator. So if you take out your calculator right now, you hit second sign, which is the inverse sign button, sign to the -1, then hit root 2 divided by 2, enter. The answer is going to give you your 45 degrees. Find the value of the arc sine of -1. So the value of the arc sine of -1, that's another way of writing sine -1 like this. So what is the angle? That's what it's asking. So I'm trying to find the sine of -1. Well, remember, sine is our y value, because sine is equivalent to y over r. R is equal to 1 on our unit circle, so we have sine is equal to y over 1. So we're saying what is the angle that gives a y value of -1? So we look at our unit circle. Our y value of -1 is right here. What is that angle? Well, the angle is 270, which is 3 pi over 2. So that's our angle. So the arc sine of -1 is equal to 270 degrees, or 3 pi over 2 if we're talking about radians. Now I want you guys to practice this one. It's a little bit different because now we're looking at cosine. So really this question is saying, what angle is is the x value equal to root 2 over 2. And remember, for cosine, our answer must be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. Find the value of tan parentheses cosine -1 of 4/7. So for this one, 4 and 7, if I think back to my unit circle, there's nothing on here that has a 4 and a 7. So that means that I can't use my unit circle to actually solve this problem. So instead, that means I'm going to use my calculator. The other thing that's telling you to kind of hint at using the calculator is it says round to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to go right to my calculator. I'm going to put tan and then second cosine, which is that cosine to the -1, 4 over 7. So when I go and I put that into my calculator, I'm simply just going to press enter, and it's going to give me an answer of 1.436. So that's all I'm asking you guys to do for this problem. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Now this question's written a little bit different, but it's actually asking you the same thing. It's asking you to find an angle. So it says cosine theta is equal to -0.86. Well, this is just a number. We're used to it being root 2 over 2 or root 3 over 2 or 1/2, but there's no reason why we can't have a decimal there. Now, what I want you to notice is that cosine theta, which is the question, I want to solve for my angle. So in order to solve for my angle, what I want to do to get rid of that cosine is take the inverse cosine of each side. These will cancel. It's kind of like matrices. And I'm left with a question that we just saw. So in earlier questions, we were just given this right-hand side, and we were looking at finding the angle. Well, again, this question is asking the same thing, but only in a different format. So how do I solve this? I go to my calculator, I press second cosine, negative 0.86, and then I get an answer.